Hello and welcome. Today we are going to be looking at ABAP. Initially we'll go through some background on what is ABAP, how did it originate, followed by a few key principles that ABAP is based on, and then we will go into the system and write our first ABAP program. So ABAP is essentially an abbreviation and stands for Advanced Business Application Programming. It originated in Germany and was originally called in German, but then SAP changed the definition of ABAP to Advanced Business Application Programming for a wider adoption of it. It's a 4GL language, fourth generation language, so you might have heard ABAP being written as ABAP 4. The 4 denotes 4GL. And currently it's positioned along with Java as the main language for SAP application server programming. Now something to note is that all the ABAP programs reside inside the SAP database. Unlike C++ and Java, they are not stored in separate external files. In the database, all the ABAP code exists in two forms: source code, which can be viewed and edited with the ABAP workbench tools, which we will look at in a minute, and generated code, which is a binary representation somewhat comparable with Java bytecode if you're familiar with Java. ABAP programs execute under the control of the runtime system, which is part of the SAP kernel. The runtime system is responsible for processing ABAP statements, controlling the flow logic of screens, and responding to events such as a user clicking on a screen button. In this sense, it can be seen as a virtual machine comparable with the Java virtual machine. A key component of the ABAP runtime system is the database interface, which turns database independent ABAP statements, OpenSQL, into statements understood by the underlying database, native SQL. And so SAP can work with a wide variety of databases, and the same ABAP program can run on all of those. So this is what the structure of an ABAP statement looks like. You have the keywords, you have the operands, and you have a period to close the statement. Soon we will develop our first ABAP program and we'll go into this syntax in more detail. This is the system architecture and where ABAP programs sit. So this is the typical three-tier architecture. You have the database at the bottom, the application server layer, and the presentation server. So the ABAP programs run at the application server level. That is both the application programs provided by SAP and the ones that are developed by yourselves are both residing and running here. The technical distribution of software is independent of its physical location. What that means is basically all three levels can be installed on top of each other on one computer, or each level can be installed on a different computer or a server. From an application consultant perspective and also as an ABAP developer, it's very important to be familiar with debugging. So this is the view of a typical ABAP debugging session. In the debugger, you can choose single step to execute a program statement by statement. You can display data objects and their current content, and you can easily switch from the new debugger to the classic debugger. There are some new features and we'll go through some of those when we hit the system. ABAP has become object oriented, and hence the concept of modularization. basically allowing you to reuse code and to manage code effectively, because the same piece of code is called by several calling programs. So without going into too much detail here, let's now look at what the system looks like and write our first ABAP. So now let's look at the object navigator and the ABAP workbench and create our very first program. So I log in as a user 49, enter my password, and the transaction I'm looking at is SEAT, and this will take me to the object navigator, and this is my ABAP workbench here. Now this is where I do all my development. So before I start writing my first program, which is Hello World, similar to the famous Hello World you might have done in C++, we'll create a package. So I'm user 49, so let me just create a package called Z49. I press enter. The system says it does not exist, so I create it, and when I create it, it asks me to fill in some information. Test package for user 49. Application component. If I'm developing all my applications in, say, finance, I would choose financial accounting, so that all the programs and all the code is stored and maintained in one place. But for our purpose, let us use CA, which is cross application components, and this is not a main package, so I just press create, and the system asks me for a request. I can create my own request or use one of the existing requests. So let's just take the first one. What this request enables me to do is to transport my program from a development system to a test system to a production system and so on. So I go ahead and create my package and subsequently my programs. So now my package is created. Under this package, I right click, create a program. So the system asks me for a program name. Let us call this Z49 underscore hello. And I create this without a top include, which basically will go into more detail later in the course. And again, the system asks me for some details. Now what type of program is it? It's a program I want to run right away. So it's an executable program. Status, it's a test program. Application, again we had chosen cross application. I can also add an authorization group, so only some users are able to run this program. I can add a logical database or a special selection screen. But for now, I'll just save it, and I'll save it as a local object, which means it is not transportable since this is a test system. So there we go. This is the program. At the moment it's just blank, so I need to put in some code here. So this is my ABAP code. First of all, I need to define parameters, and when as a type, the system very helpfully tells me the right command. Type string. Now ABAP does not really distinguish between uppercase and lowercase. However, it is good practice to always write in uppercase. new line. Remember, all ABAP statements have to end with a full stop. And now I'm going to output hello, and output hello with the name that I entered to start with. So what this program does is, first of all, I define a parameter called PA_name of type string. Then I write hello world, and in a new line I write hello, and then followed by the parameter that I initially entered in the report. So this is my very simple program, and I have intentionally made a syntax error so that we can see how the syntax check in ABAP works. So after I've written the program, I go to check my syntax, which is this symbol here. When I press it, I get an error. So let's look at the error. What this says is the statement parameter not expected. A correct similar statement is parameters. So instead of the semicolon here, I need the colon, and that is the cause of this error. So I fixed it now. Let me do my check again. Now the program is syntactically correct. So this is the message, and now I need to activate this program. To activate the program, there is this icon called activate. And I get the message. This is my current object that I'm working on, which is an ABAP report and ABAP program, and there are some other objects I'd worked on earlier. So the first one is all correct. So I press enter, and the system compiles this program and activates it. So this is our first program. Let's see if it works at all. So to test the program, I choose this icon, direct processing, or you can use F8. Okay, it seems to work. It's asking me for a name, so let me put the name as user 49 and then execute. There you go. Hello world, hello user 49. So the program has worked. Our first ABAP program has worked. So going back to the program again, this is my definition that it's a report program, an ABAP report. This is the parameter that I enter, and this is what I output. On one line I say hello world, on the next line I say hello with the parameter that I enter. So let's run it again quickly. User 49 F8, hello world on the first line, hello user 49 on the second. So well done, you've just created your first ABAP program. There's one thing to keep in mind. Before you are allowed to develop anything in SAP, you need what is called the access key against your user or against the object you might be modifying. So in this system, in the test system, user 49 already had that access key, but if you do not, you will need to get it from SAP via Service Marketplace, or you will need to ask your basis system admin colleague to give it to you. One of the things you might be asked to do as an ABAP developer is to link a program to a transaction. So when I type in the transaction code here, I automatically call the program rather than having to call it each time explicitly. So our program hello world, we will just attach it to a transaction. So let us go to the object navigator. This is our package. Right click, create, and you cannot see it, so let me just push this down a little bit. So again, right click, create, and you have to create a transaction which is in this others transaction. So this is what my transaction screen looks like. So transaction code, I can decide what transaction code, like we use SEAT to come to the object navigator. Let us say Z49 is my transaction code for hello world, and I have to choose the right start object. This is a report transaction, so select this and I get the message that the objects will be created in the original language, my logon language. Now what was the program? Z49 underscore hello. This is the standard selection screen. I can start with a variant, which basically means when I call this transaction, the parameter PA underscore name will be filled with the default value, but for now I'll leave it blank. Authorization object, I will leave it blank as well. And if I move down, transaction is a professional user transaction, and for SAP GUI for Windows, we are working in Windows at the moment. So that's all I need. Let me do a quick check. Get an information message. Let me try to save it first, and again I'll save it as a local object, and let's see if I can execute it. So to execute the transaction, I go back to the logon original screen, easy access menu. What was the transaction? Z49, the same as my user ID. Now if I click enter, I hopefully will get the same screen I got when I executed the program directly. There you go. So user 49, execute, and works the same way. So what we've done now is we've attached our first program hello world to a transaction, and the transaction is Z49. Now we're going to look at some basic ABAP statements by writing a slightly more complicated program. This program will basically compute. It's like a basic calculator. Let's see how we do it. Going to SEAT, favorite transaction. In my package, I create a program called Z49 underscore compute without a top include. So this is again an executable program, a test program, cross application components, and I save as a local object again. So there's my program, the shell of it. So what I want to do in this report is ask the user for two numbers and an operation. So number 1 plus number 2, or number 1 minus number 2, or number 1 into number 2. We'll not go into division now because you need to take care of division by 0 and other things, so it becomes slightly more complex. So I have two numbers and an operation. So first of all, I define my parameters, and my first number is int1 of type integer. My second parameter is the operation, so PA parameter underscore OP for operation, and this is of type character, and length of this character is just 1, let's say, so plus or minus or into. and my third parameter is int2, which is the second number, and this is of type integer as well. So these are the three parameters I play with and ask the user for inputs. And then I need to define my result. So let's call it gv underscore result of type p, length 16, and it may have decimals as well. For example, if you are using division, decimals 2. And now I define my logic with an if statement, and we will see how branching works, and we'll use the when statement as well here. So if I have an operation which is an addition, or it is a subtraction, or it is a multiplication, close the bracket and put a full stop. Then I go to the case statement. Let me just make it a little bit longer so you can see better. And now I go to the case statement, case PA. What needs to happen when my PA op parameter operation is plus is my result is equal to the sum of two integers. And similarly, when the operation is minus, then my result is int1 minus PA. So when it's minus, I just minus. When it's into, my result is into. And then I end my case statement, which I started with here. I end it here. And now I need to output the result. So I use the write statement, write result gv result, and now I need to close my if statement, which I started here. So as you can see, the if statement is closed here, the case statement is closed here, and my parameters are two numbers and my operations are three different operations. So let's do a quick syntax check. And there is an issue here. Let's take a look. Incorrect logical expression. So I have not, I need to put a blank there. So basically it wanted a blank here, which I have now put. Let's see for any other errors. Yes, there's another one, and this one is saying unable to interpret equal over here. So I've forgotten to put PA underscore INT, so let me just cut and paste. And then try my syntax check again. And it's the same error, and that's because I do not have a full stop here. So these are the kind of errors you will get. And now finally my code is syntactically correct. So As you know, if your code is very complex, it can look a bit messy, and what SAP provides is the so-called pretty printer over here at the top. So when I press this, it will automatically arrange the code properly, so it will look better. Let's give it a go. There you go. So I get the message, pretty printer complete. SAP has made the code look pretty and easier to manage. So the next step is activate. Again, I get my standard report compute is activated, and now the real test. Let's run it and see if it works. Okay, I run the report. I get my three parameters, integer 1, operation, and 2. So let's say 4 plus 8. And what's the result I expect? I expect 12. I got 12. Let's try to run it again. This time 4 into 8. Result should be 32. 32. So now you've made a simple calculator in ABAP. Hope you enjoyed this session and see you again soon.